Good morning, and welcome to another episode of Women of Consciousness. This week, Natalie is still on vacation, so I am having some guest co-hosts once again. John, if you listened last week, he was on, and we talked about the divine and wounded aspects of the masculine and feminine energies. And this week we had decided we were going to discuss healing with plant medicines and psychedelics. And then I have another friend from that same spiritual kind of healing community, Lindsay, who is joining as well. So, two wonderful, amazing people today to just kind of share their insights and experiences and really bring some life and some passion, I think, to this topic that is really on a rise here in the United States, at least, as laws are being changed state by state and federally. So, good morning, Lindsay. Good morning, John. You guys both there?
Good morning.
Awesome. So thank you, John, for coming back. Yay.
Oh, absolutely.
And
Thank you for having me.
yeah, absolutely. It was so much fun last week.
It
And
was.
yeah, and thanks, Lindsay, for joining.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. Um, so I guess I had said last week a little bit about how John and I had met via like these healing retreats, and it's the same thing for Lindsay. We met a little bit before John and I. We met last November, I believe, correct?
I think it was New Year's Eve weekend.
Was it New Year's Eve weekend? Okay, I wasn't sure if you had come back for that one or if that was your first one.
Yeah, I think that was my first one. New Year's
Oh, okay. That was a fun, fun weekend.
Eve. Yes, it was.
Um, so I guess whoever really wants to go first, I'll kind of open it up to you guys. But I'm just kind of curious, like your yeah, just your thoughts and feelings, and maybe even like the whole connection. I feel like the medicine calls us. And so when you hear that calling and you decide to jump down that rabbit hole and go on the journey. So I'm just curious if you're willing to share anything.
Sure. Yeah, I can jump in. I guess I think this the whole plant medicine thing sort of got on my radar maybe about 5 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, and I was really interested in. I saw this documentary that Aubrey Marcus made about ayahuasca, and I found that really compelling and wanted to learn more. And so I started like kind of just like researching about ayahuasca a lot, and but I got kind of a bit shy about it after that. Like the more I learned, the more I was like, oh, I don't know. Um, but but I had already done mushrooms in college, and so that seemed like a much more comfortable starting place for me.
Mm,
And so I started researching different places that I could go for that, and selected one and went, and it was like the most profound experience of my life, I think, that week. And and it was incredible, and I met amazing people. And I remember before I went, I was just asking them, like, who, like, what's the demographics of the people? Like, is it, mostly older people, younger people, like, what, I was just kind of curious. And they were like, well, all we can say is that, like, the people that are supposed to find each other will. And
oh, I love that.
yeah,
Yeah, it's cool.
I was like, okay, let's, that this will be interesting. And I get there, and I mean, it was like, I couldn't have. It was like literally like felt like the universe had like hand selected all the people like for a specific purpose, because there's like that connection. And there's something about like being in ceremony with people that really bonds you as well. I think a lot quicker than you can be bonded in other most other situations. I mean, save like war or something.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't know. Anyway, it was just really, it was an amazing week. And then I sort of just got more interested in the path, because I quickly realized after returning home that you can't you can't just keep holding on to this one thing and trying to. I mean, you can work through it for so long, but once you've sort of done the work that the medicine has shown you,
Hmm.
sort of, I had to go back to the drawing board, I felt like. And so it's been, really a few years past where I was just kind of winging it with myself, but it's been really wonderful to have like a community of people. So it was such a serendipity when I saw that there was that retreat and I went.
Yeah.
And I met you guys. It's been really amazing.
Absolutely. I agree. Thank you for sharing that. I love that. I absolutely agree. I think every single one that I have participated in, um, even outside of like our community space and other retreats, there's that alignment. It's a magical alignment of the right place, the right time, the right people. Um,
Yeah.
it's funny too. You still haven't done ayahuasca yet, have you?
No, not yet.
No, yeah.
It's on the horizon.
So, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying it's on the horizon.
It's on the
It's
horizon.
someday.
Right, right. And that's the thing with ayahuasca too. I remember when I discovered it through San Pedro, going down that kind of rabbit hole of research. And as soon as I came across ayahuasca, I was like, forget not San Pedro, peyote. I'm sorry. Peyote. I was like, well, forget that. I was like, I want ayahuasca. And so I went to Peru for my adventure, and same thing. It was like 5 days, and it was people from all over the world, and in that special like setting, just being able to connect with them and hear their stories, because and all of the other people that I was there with, none of them had told their parents, and these are all like middle-aged adults, but they were all like afraid of their families knowing what they were doing. And so I kind of thought that was always this funny thing where you could rely on this total stranger next to you, but your family back home had no idea what you were doing.
Yeah, that is funny.
But John, I would love to hear if you want to take a minute and describe anything about how like medicine kind of called you. I know last week you were talking about a little bit more of a history.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the medicine called to me pretty early in life. I started with, obviously cannabis and mushrooms pretty early on in my teenage years. I had a lot of great experiences, but then kind of gravitated away from that. And I went into working primarily with cannabis and just really becoming very intimate with the plant, and a lot of work directly with patients, and just trying to get people to a healing perspective with cannabis. And I love doing that. And then kind of just out of the blue, the concept of mushrooms started to call back to me, and I started to just started to do a lot of research, started to like really get to know more about the mushroom, and more about its usage throughout cultures. And then I began to kind of, I kind of took the Terence McKenna protocol and started doing, a heroic dose by yourself in the dark. And that's a pretty interesting experience when you're just kind of sitting with a pretty hefty dose kind of by yourself in the dark. You really connect to your true essence. So I was doing that for a little while. And then, like ayahuasca, that was something that I wanted to go to Peru and experience for about 15 years. But, working and family, I wasn't able to get away. And a friend of mine had mentioned that there's a group in that was in New Hampshire at the time that was serving ayahuasca. And that really called to me. So I kind of figured out how to get there and do that. And once I had that experience, I think like what Lindsay was saying, the aspect of the ceremony and connecting with people during that ceremony is something profound. What I discovered kind of being in that group was that we're all in this together, and we all carry so much different trauma or pain, or just things that we want to get within ourselves that we can't necessarily get to, and the plants will guide us there. And ayahuasca, that weekend was a profound experience for me, just to like you guys were saying, connect with a group of people, meet some people that I knew that were probably going to be in my life for a long time. It was a very unique and interesting feeling. So I kind of have been working with different medicines, and then found the group where we all met, and that has actually absolutely 100% changed my life as far as the community that I've discovered, the relationship with myself that I've been able to discover through these ceremonies, and a level of vulnerability in searching for yourself, as we all kind of Pam has seen me purge pretty deeply, you know what I mean? But it's like that level of vulnerability where
Right.
you're safe and comfortable, and you can actually get the work done in a beautiful environment. And it's been really, life changing, absolutely, and really inspiring to witness my own development as well as the development of other people that kind of come to experience the ceremony.
Absolutely. And I agree. I think that for myself is one of the most profound things of doing psychedelics and healing, with a community. Over the past year, it's just seeing everybody's growth.
Mm,
Compared to like the retreats where I just pop in for a weekend and pop out. And sure, you have that connection in that space, but then it's so hard to go back to your day-to-day life, and you lose those connections a lot of times, or at least I did. And so to be able to be in this space and to really get to know everyone's story, and like you said, that vulnerability, people open up about what they've experienced, those traumas, those pains,
mm,
those phases of life that we're transitioning into and out of. So for that aspect, I think, like, as much as I struggle, I think personally with the path to a facilitator, like in a clinical setting, if I was, to go and get my licensing and do all of that, I don't feel like I could sit in an office and help administer like these
mm.
kind of, things to people. I think you need that the ceremony with it. I think you need nature with it. You need fun and play. But yeah, to be able to actually get more on a personal level and really build friendships and family. That's been the most surprising and beautiful part for me.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I'm curious, what is and you can, take turns. So I guess I'll ask Lindsay first. You did the San Pedro as well, right? The cactus,
Yeah. Yep.
which is similar, for those who don't know. San Pedro it comes from Peru, similar to San peyote. I'm gonna get them all tongue twisted now. Um, that medicine is really like hard to drink for some, but then once you get it down, I feel like that's the hardest part because there is no purging, like John said, with like ayahuasca and such. It's more of a like 12-hour long, really mellow riding waves of insight and whatnot. And so yeah, I'm just curious what has been maybe your favorite or most profound experience with like a certain um, plant, if that makes sense.
Um. Well, I guess. I mean, the San Pedro was really mellow,
Mm,
if you will, and it was it was helpful, and it felt made me feel very grounded, and that was a great experience. But as far as like the most profound experience that I've had with plant medicine, that's probably my first 5 gram mushroom trip, down in Jamaica several years ago. And I just I remember being very aware of the fact that I was able to control my brain, essentially. Like I was down in the I was down on my knees, like looking at the ground, just because I was
mhm.
feeling a bit nauseous. And so I remember looking at the ground and thinking like how disgusting and ugly it looked, but knowing in my head that I could flip the script by focusing on something else, you know? And I think that in general extrapolates to life. It's like you do have control of your thoughts to a certain extent. I mean, you maybe not your thoughts, but like what you focus on. And so
Absolutely.
just trying to like, zoom back out and being like, okay. And I remember flipping it in that moment, being like, okay, no, I'm gonna find the beauty in this ugliness on the ground. Like there's like worms and dirt and whatever. And then after that, it was like something burst, and I had like a very unifying experience with the universe, where I felt like I became just a point of consciousness, like a god, and like nothing existed anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, it was like I realized that like without anything, without matter, without people, without places, experience, like things to experience, then there's nothing. I mean, there's what's the point, right? Like being having consciousness in a vacuum would be kind of a waste. And so it was sort of like it was sort of like explained to me through this experiential process, that the reason why all of this is here and why anything is at all is because of that exact thing, and just there was like something just clicked in my brain, and it really like changed my view on, I think, spiritual. I mean, I was always sort of a spiritual person, but I had given up on religion after
Yeah.
years of trauma around that. And so yeah, I think that it really revived me spiritually. It like lit a spark or a candle in my heart or something, and I felt so much freer after
Mm.
that experience. Like, and during it too. I mean, there was like just a bunch of amazing things that happened within the experience itself, but I won't go into all that. But I mean, it was a beautiful day, and I was like communing with the trees, and they were, each tree I would walk to would like speak to me, and and the setting was just gorgeous, and so everything about it was just incredible. And afterwards, I just remember feeling so free, like a child again, like where I didn't feel like I had to hide myself anymore, like, which has been a feeling, that's been a theme for many decades. And well, maybe not many, but at least a few. Um, and and yeah, I just felt like I could like really relax into myself and like let my light shine again for the first time in many years. And
That's
so it was just such a, I felt alive, and I felt free, and I just had so much love in my heart, and I would literally run up to strangers on the beach and like try to give them hugs. Like
uh-huh.
I was just so happy. And so that was very profound. That was probably the most profound for me.
um yeah, that is really, really beautiful, and I can relate to those experiences. I think that's definitely a gift of the plant medicines, mushrooms, absolutely. I've definitely feel the loop cycles of mushrooms. And so to be able to like pull yourself out and like, tap into that conscious awareness, I think that is really profound, because you know what I mean? You're in these levels of yourself that normally in the day-to-day existence you're not connected to. Um and I can relate to that through my first DMT experience, that I had, where I became like the I am presence, like I was right embodied in that. And then it was like from there, it was just this extension of the consciousness of the universe. And I remember just feeling and being consciousness, like all of the elements of my body, the earth, the air, the water, like all of that. The breath was like the last thing I held on to before like everything was gone and I had no body, and I was just a piece of the conscious universe. And I remember like asking like, what is this? Like, what the hell has happened? And then when I came back out of that experience, really being so appreciative of having a body and understanding, even though I couldn't fully understand it, it was that material and why, right, we're born into this physical and we experience life, because I couldn't imagine just being in that state of being, just floating around in nothingness as a conscious mind's eye. So that was very profound for me as well, and I haven't been the same. So I could relate to what you were saying there. Um, but John, do you have any medicines that have really been a powerful experience or really like strong connection that it's like your go-to?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that there's a time and a place for all the medicines, and I've really enjoyed working with a lot of them. You know, you mentioned DMT. I think that's a very powerful medicine that is so unique and is so there's almost not even words for where you can go in that kind of space. And I do think that DMT is very important because I mean we're all processing DMT in our body. We make it endogenously, so I think there is something to the molecule and really experiencing that. But you know, one of the most profound stories, like over this summer, was with ayahuasca, and this last ceremony we had done 2 ceremonies in a day, which is unusual, but and it was a lot. And we started. We had a day ceremony, which was a beautiful experience. And I know I danced. I remember Pam, you were dancing like it was the sun was
Yes.
shining. My soul felt so free and so
Hmm.
open, and I was just so connected to myself and my body and really just enjoying the environment and the people I was with. And then the ceremony kind of ended and we took a break. That night we sat for another ceremony and this became very intense. I remember the as the sun was setting at dawn, or I mean at dusk, the level of intensity that I was experiencing was something that I almost couldn't handle. And I can remember kind of going kind of off from the group and kind of trying to make amends with Mother Ayahuasca and just saying, you know, if you stop this now, I can't take this anymore. If you stop this now, like I will stop coming here. I'll go to the movies on Saturday nights. I will, not do this anymore. And I basically got into a conversation with the medicine, and that she explained to me, she's like, is that really what you want, or you're at this threshold? And I could recognize I was literally standing in a threshold energy, and that there was the option to go back, but there was the option to push forward. And
Hmm.
it was that strength in me that I was like, well, I'm obviously I'm looking for more of myself. I'm looking for more of a connection to this universe and my placement here. So I'm not going to go back. I will push forward. And at that moment, the relief and like the beauty that I discovered, I mean, I literally was propelled into this field where I could see everybody's energy and I could feel all our connected energy. And really, I went from, the way I described it before, it was like almost being in like a revolutionary war camp. It was very heavy energy. So all of a sudden, this like boom, beauty, connection, oneness with the group, the earth, the medicine. It was just such a profound, energetic shift that it really just allowed me to witness myself and my strength and my connection to this guide, and how she showed me my own power and then gave me something in return for, which is sometimes something we don't receive in this world, is actually getting a reward for being present and trying to do the work.
Hmm. That's wonderful. I agree. I felt like I've got a reward every now and then. Maybe insight in the message that came, or the shifting, I think, in the journey that I was on. I was thinking, was there a like specific piece of wisdom or an insight that either one of you guys ever received that was really profound and stayed with you?
Oh, absolutely. If
Yeah.
you don't mind, I'll jump in. The San Pedro, we were talking about San Pedro earlier, the cactus.
Mm.
Um, Over the summer, we sat with San Pedro, and I kind of San Pedro doesn't really take you too deep, but for the energy that I was in, I kind of went kind of deep into my head, and I asked the grandfather spirit of the cactus. I said, when I've been dealing with a lot of poverty consciousness and a lot of like darkness around money, and I asked the grandfather spirits, when is this going to be over for me? I'm ready to transition out of this. And clear as day, the cactus told me, when you learn to drink deeply from an empty cup. And that is something that hit me, and that's where I've been able to work with that in my life, and just recognizing that there's so much here that that can fulfill me, that's right here, and that I don't need to be always looking for something to fill my cup. I'm sustained by just experiencing this life, and that was very profound for me, and it really changed my perspective on my situation.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Can you say it one more time?
Yeah, learning to drink deeply from an empty cup.
Drink deeply from an empty cup. I like that. That is really beautiful and profound.
Yeah, and it's definitely changed. It changed my whole perspective on my situation, and it allowed me to really contemplate what I have rather than what I don't have.
Right. And I think especially just for us that are givers and we don't really receive from others, we're always, taking care of and nourishing other people.
Mhm.
Um, and so then we have to work extra hard sometimes to take care of ourselves and make ourselves a priority. And even in that instance, right? Because like you're not really showing yourself the love and the value and the worth,
Right,
because you're putting everybody and everything else first and above you.
right.
Yeah. How about you, Lindsay? Was there any like profound message of like wisdom the medicine left you?
There's been several, but I think the thing that gets kind of reiterated over and over, like almost like the loops you were describing, Pam,
Yep.
is that everything is a choice. Like, and I have a journal that has maybe 3 or 4 pages of just like chicken scratch scrawl of like different sizes, like
Yeah.
just all over the place. Like everything is a choice. Everything is like, because it just was like that was the message that kind of just kept coming through, and it's happened more in more than one sitting, where that's been sort of the salient takeaway. And um, yeah, and just also another one that was really profound though was that this, like, basically the story that you tell yourself determines your outcome. So whatever message, the self-talk about, oh, like, I mean, to take John's example, because I've also had some similar energy around money. To be like, I don't have any money. I'm never gonna have money. Why are all these other people? Why do they have this and I don't? And like that kind of a narrative is only going to reinforce the same, more of the same, and make it worse, maybe. So just remembering, like, that the story you tell yourself really does. It's not just words. I mean, words are, become thoughts are things, and words become real, and all that. So I think those are two themes that have come up multiple times throughout different journeys, for me. So yeah, that's probably those are probably the two that stand out.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think for me, I can't really say that I've had like a profound like statement or, sentence or whatnot, but uh, like I always see the structure. The universe shows me like secrets, I guess, of like how it's, built or whatever. Um, and so for me, it's always tapping more into like this hidden dimension and really seeing like, the whole man behind the curtain, I guess, Wizard of Oz theme there. Um, so with that, I've had profound insight and understanding the human journey compared to like, the soul aspect. Um, I think I've done a lot in the past year with my masculine. Um, the medicine really went after my egoic brain.
Mhm.
I think just layers of the mind, right, that gets trapped in these thoughts. And for me, it was just more awareness of that, and so trying to like developmentally like move along, I guess. Which is just really kind of weird to explain to people sometimes. And these journeys can be really hard to articulate, like what you do see and what you do feel, but it's so profound. And I love to journal when I'm on the medicine. So I definitely understand that of having like pages of chicken scratch and like that you go back and you're trying to read like what was the medicine channeling. And
Yeah.
I guess I'm trying to think of like a question or whatnot. I guess I'm just curious. Is there something you guys haven't tried for like, you know, a psychedelic or plant medicine or whatnot that you would like to?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Lindsay.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, well, there's probably a few. I never really like there was a lot of things in high school and, early college days that like I didn't try. I don't know why. I'm not like a I learned how to walk, literally learned how to walk by like running around and falling down. And I mean that extrapolates out into like more than just learning how to walk as a baby, but so I'm surprised that I didn't try as many, as a lot of my friends did, but two that stand out in my head that I passed up that I definitely need to revisit are LSD and ecstasy, I guess, or MDMA. I guess is the more technical term. So those two, I'm feeling called, especially to the LSD very soon. I don't know what it is about it that's I'm a bit. I think it's because mushrooms are very. They can be very like I don't know. I don't want to say harsh, but like intense and kind of. They can kind of like very much humble you, and
Hmm.
kind of show you your shit, and it can be a very difficult experience. And so, from what I've heard about it, it sounds like LSD is you know a bit easier to like maybe you have more control over where you go than maybe you do with mushrooms. I'm not sure. It depends on. It seems like it depends on who you ask, but it does. I do seem to get overwhelmingly. Um, it seems like people are overwhelmingly positive about LSD on the whole, and so I'm excited to try that one day.
Yeah. And I feel like when you have, right, like we talked about earlier, when it calls to you and you
Right.
just know, and then I think it's just about setting those intentions of, right, allowing a safe space and the right time, and it will come. Um, I did LSD in my mid 20s with my ex-husband. And because of those experiences, I will absolutely admit my ego has some fear about doing it now. When I was married, he I really considered it more experiencing things, but he would be like, "Oh, do this because I want to do this." And I remember he'd have me do like 2 hits of acid at once, and it was too much for like my body size. And so yeah, so I think my ego has fear left over from that. Um so I know I have work to do around it before I can kind of go down that path, I think. But that's, I yeah, it was pretty cool experience somewhat though. I remember just being paranoid. Um but yeah, I remember snow in July too. So I don't know. LSD is something else. John, how about you?
Uh, yeah, I really am feeling called to sit with the medicine that comes from the bufo frog, which is 5-MAO DMT. I've experienced a lot of other DMTs, but I've never experienced the 5-MAO, and I'm looking to have that experience eventually. That and I'm interested in sitting with ibogaine, which I've heard is not the greatest. Is a very tough experience, but again, I think I'm just interested in the plant teachers and the guidance that each teacher can kind of give me. So those are two that I'm looking to seek, or that I'm kind of calling out to, and when they come to me, that'll be the time.
Mm, that's awesome. So John, I do want to ask you, because I know you and I, like, especially last week when we were talking about the wounded, feminine and masculine and whatnot, we kind of went into archetypes and the hero's journey and all that. I'm kind of curious if you could explain for the audience, like, initiation and how ancient, like, civilizations and, right, some of these archetypal myths and whatnot, how plant medicine is a part of initiation.
Sure, yeah, sure. I mean, what I'm primarily focused on, what I do a lot of my research in, is the ceremonies that took place at Eleusis in Greece, which was a ceremony dedicated to Demeter, and her kind of traveling into the underworld to seek Persephone, or even just kind of really what the kind of story goes, to kind of be brief. As she's looking for Persephone and kind of goes into her darkness for 9 days, she wanders into this town of Eleusis and gets into the royal household and becomes a nanny for the prince, and decides to give him immortality. So she's kind of doing this ritual, holding this baby into a fire, and the mother comes in and it gets like, obviously sees her baby being held in a fire, and is very upset. So she starts yelling at Demeter, but she doesn't know it's Demeter. She doesn't know that it's a goddess here holding, kind of doing a immortality ritual on her child. So she stops the process, and Demeter gets kind of angry and says, well, seeing how I was going to give this child immortality, what you're going to do is you're going to now build a temple to me, and then we will give immortality to everybody that comes to this ceremony. So this became the origin of this ceremony that lasted for more than 2,000 years. And it was like the biggest thing in the Greco-Roman world, where slaves were allowed to attend, women, children. It was pretty much this huge event that everybody would come to, and you would fast. There would be a lot of things you had to prepare yourself before the ritual and the initiation. And that was, fasting, and you had to purify yourself, and you had to be able to speak Greek no matter where you came from in the world. So people would prepare for months. You didn't have to speak fluent Greek, but you had to get by in Greek. And you also couldn't have blood on your hands, so you couldn't have killed somebody outside of war, I guess. But then you purified yourself. And when you came to the ceremony, they offered you a cup called the kakekion. And it's still being debated what was in that cup, but there's a lot of evidence to say it was either an ergot mold that would be kind of like an LSD kind of thing, or mushrooms itself, because there's a lot of evidence that says that there was mushrooms. It was a mushroom brew brewed with barley. And the whole purpose of this was to initiate yourself into essentially your own death. And to the whole idea was that if you die before you die, you will not die. So if you go through this initiation process and this rite and experience yourself in another world, when you come back, you are not the same. And now you've actually conquered your own death, and now you can live again. So it's this idea that you have to be initiated into almost your entire lifetime cycle, and then you can actually be reborn again to live a true life. And I always thought that was a very profound thing, where we're crossing this threshold into this, like you said, like to be out of your body and then to come back in your body and feel so happy to like have a physical presence. That's a unique, profound experience that, nobody ever forgets. And, even for me, like I've, like you were mentioning with DMT, I've been in those like heightened realms where you are just a piece of consciousness experiencing other realms as other realms exist. And then when you come back, it's just like, wow, like I do have so much to actually like touch and feel and be present with and actually like embrace. It's a great feeling.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. That was beautiful. I love the way you tell the myth stories, for sure.
I try to summarize it. I could talk for hours on that, so I'll just try to be as concise as possible.
I know, me too. I get it. Um, no, and that's how I see it, right? This initiation, because yeah, like you're no longer in this kind of ordinary 9 to 5 world. It's that
Right.
egoic death and rebirth, and like you're not the same.
Absolutely.
Mm. Lindsay, how about for you? I know, like you had said, like I struggled with religion, and I do consider myself spiritual and all. Do you, by any chance, do you see how like initiation with medicine has played a role, like for you?
I think, yeah, I mean, certainly, yeah, like I said, like before, and you just mentioned that, I definitely feel like it brought me back to myself spiritually. And I think that like initiation and just, those sort of things in our culture are sort of missing in a lot of
Absolutely.
ways, like especially like, the coming of age sort of things. Like we don't really have that, and there's really no point at which you're really an adult. It's sort of like, this kind of gradual thing. And not that, taking plant medicines makes you an adult, but it certainly gives you a better perspective on yourself, and different it allows you to see things from different perspective than you normally have in your, as you would say, 9 to 5 consciousness or whatever. And
Right.
so I think it's been a game changer for me, like all across the board. I've just been much more in tune with, and I think it's because like you can, for me, it's when I'm like you were saying about the cycles. It for me, I have cycles on the mushrooms as well, and I get very in touch with like the way that my brain works. Like the background noise that's always there, it's just like amplified, so I can hear it, and I can be more, conscious of it. And once I do that, it's like I sorry, I
No,
just
you're
lost.
okay.
But yeah, I just I feel like it's good practice for everyday life, and I feel like it's been just such a big, it's helped me in so many ways that I can't even begin to describe it. And so in that way, it's been a pretty significant
Mm,
initiation.
yeah, that's beautiful. Um, for me, so when I first ever did anything, I went to, yeah, South America. I went to Peru for ayahuasca. Um, I had spent like a month there, and the retreat for the ayahuasca was like the first week that I did, and then in the following weeks I just kind of backpack around Sacred Valley and ended up at Machu Picchu. And so for me, I went through like this whole kind of massive ordeal. Like John had mentioned earlier, right? Like especially with ayahuasca, there's a process, like fasting or being on specific diets. I will say with ayahuasca, for those listening, really really do your research and see your doctors. I know ayahuasca is becoming more popular in the United States, and there are more, like churches and retreats and things that are popping up. So I mean, literally you can pretty much go to quite a few states and have these experiences. But I would just, yeah, so I was called for that, and I think I didn't realize at the time it was an initiation. I just saw it as a vacation. I But then it was like realizing the ordeal around the fasting, and like the health aspects of it. I had to go, negotiate with my doctor to get her to sign off on the paperwork, because to be honest, when I think with the spiritual awakening, there's that whole dark night of the soul and some depression that can come up naturally. And so then when you're dealing with psychedelics, the biggest um I think is like psychosis, right? When you have a lot of traumas or you have a lot of negative energy, like that's always the more scarier aspect, is the psychosis that people go through. Um, and so yeah, so with the ayahuasca, there's a little bit more detailed there than a shroom trip, or San Pedro or DMT or some of the other things that we had talked about. So with the ayahuasca, I I went on this whole month-long journey. And then when I got to school for my master's degree the following year, and I started getting into like the psychology aspects and looking at, initiation and ritual, and like you had said, coming of age and these rites of passage that we no longer acknowledge or celebrate. I had this huge epiphany and realized like that was my rite of passage, whatever, the universe was calling me forward for. um that whole journey and all of this, not, I don't want to say suffering, but the more unpleasant, uncomfortable experiences of it was that rite of passage. And so then it was just a couple of years waiting, I think, for things to shift and click. And so the past year it's been like, oh my goodness, like every month or every couple of months, we've been doing these different medicines together in this beautiful space. So yeah, I guess, do you guys have any other like thoughts or comments or, anything you want to add about it?
Well, yeah, just to kind of reiterate what you said about ayahuasca and preparing, I think preparing for any ceremony or any experience, I think is a big deal. I think the more prep work you can do to kind of cleanse your body out, to kind of make space for the teacher to kind of come in and kind of put a little bit of sacrifice of yourself for this beautiful message from the universe you're about to receive, is always beneficial. I think that's something that's very important. Like you were saying with the dieta for ayahuasca, it's rough and it's tough, and especially coming from our society where we're used to kind of eating whatever, and we kind of grab this or grab that, and then when you can only eat a few things, you really have to kind of really focus on your physicality. And focusing on your physicality, I think, on the back end allows you to kind of experience more of your spiritual aspects, having purified yourself. And I think it's important. I think you're right to point that out, that any kind of pre-work you can do before an experience like that to kind of
Mhm.
purify and cleanse is definitely beneficial.
Absolutely. And I'd say even just doing your shadow work and doing your healing.
Sure.
Because the one thing I did notice right away when I went to South America, and this was in like 2019, or 18. No, it was in 18. Some people were drawn there to the medicine and they didn't really know why. It was just, you know what I mean? Like, I just want to try this and I have no idea what's going to happen, or, you know what I mean? And then there were other people that really knew what the medicine was and knew, like, kind of more how this was going to impact them. It was actually surprising because there was like two couples that were like on their honeymoon, and I really thought like that was a strange thing to be doing for your honeymoon, but okay. Um, but like, yeah, with so what I noticed was I had been working on myself since 2015, 2016. So at that point I had only been 2 years of like conscious awareness after my divorce, like the whole, like I said, that dark night of the soul that kind of jolts you into a spiritual awakening. So I was very, very dedicated to my healing. Before the plant medicine, I was using, guided meditations and
Mm,
active imagination. And I was going back, into those trauma times, and I was doing the healing.
mm,
So when I got to South America, I couldn't really relate to the people that were having a really hard time with the medicine. I did 3 ceremonies in that first week. So it was like your first night and your second night medicines, then you had a day off, and then like your last night was again your final medicine. And so the first 2 nights I was so energized and I was on this like natural happy high. I had like, did some healing for sure, but I had also connected with a part of my soul that I had never connected with before. And so seeing people who couldn't get out of bed and who were really, drained and exhausted, some fearful imagery or whatnot. And it wasn't until the third night when I had my ego death, which I had to submit to by purging, by vomiting, and I couldn't do it. Like, it was hours, and I just would not submit to that death. And it showed me how strong I really, really was. And I finally understood after that night, like, I understood the darkness of the medicine and what these, people were being seen and shown. So I've been very lucky that I have never personally had any major like psychosis or negative experiences, but I have kind of seen other people from the outside what looks like, maybe it's really scary and dark, but knowing on the inside that they're, battling demons or being shown, universal truths, that's just part of their journey and who they are. Um, so I think sometimes doing whatever you can besides like the food diet, but just to clear yourself out of any negative energies. And that's why it's so important to do energy cleansing, right? Using Palo Santo, sage, any kind of protection like oils or sprays, just because you don't know what's being released around you by other people and that what you could pick up on. So I think there's definitely some darkness with energy that isn't always talked about as well, and so it's really, really important to protect yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's kind of my little spiel about all
Well,
of
and
the positives, but there's also, if you're not aware and you don't know and you don't think about it, there's an exchange of energy that may not be so pleasant and things can get attached.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think just to make one more point, I think the most important thing is integration of all this stuff, because it's one thing to have these experiences and then to be able to talk as a group the next day about your experiences and kind of try to um, bring it all back in. I've seen, like you said, I've seen people have very what it seems to me to be dark experiences, and then the next day at integration, they say how that was the most beautiful, profound thing they've ever experienced in their life. So
Right.
you have to like kind of look at that full picture and really um, bring it back in and try to make sense with it. And I think that's why community is so important, because we can continuously share our experiences, share our stories, and how it's affecting our day to day between ceremonies.
Hmm. Absolutely. And I think that's the most important thing is like when the ceremony ends and the integration starts happening and you go back to the day-to-day life, it's so easy to forget those messages. It's, easy, especially when you don't have that community. I think for the people that are just traveling, and finding retreats and doing it, on their vacation time, or even people that are just doing medicines alone,
Right.
in their home, I feel like that is just so much on the rise. Especially with mushrooms and things, now that laws are kind of shifting federally and on state levels. I just I can't imagine doing any of it alone. I don't think after these
Right.
experiences I would want to do it alone.
Yeah. Yeah. In the past, when I've done it alone, it's been much less profound, let's just say. I mean, it's harder to integrate too. I'm glad you brought that up, John. I was gonna mention integration too, because I think integration, I feel like, it's easier to just go have the big experience and then, just keep moving on. But and it definitely works much better if you are intentional about your integration. And I also think another thing to mention is having an intention, like when you go into it, is good. I mean, sometimes the intention is just whatever the medicine is going to show you, because that's ultimately what you're going to get. But I think having some sort of an idea, like you were saying, in Peru, some of the people not really having done that pre-work. I think that it's easy. A lot of people maybe just want to go have the experience and not do the work before and after. And I think the work before and after is what kind of really solidifies it and makes it so valuable. And I fully agree that like having that community space where you have an ongoing relationship with the people that are also doing the work, I think that's been huge. So I, I definitely prefer that. Not that there's nothing to be said about doing something alone, like you can get something out of that. I just find that the the collective energy of the group, it is sort of like its own thing that lends itself into the experience, and also, like you mentioned, helps with the integration as well.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Integration is super important. I'm just thinking, like, when it comes to integration, like, what are some of the ways, I guess, because, right, integration, what does that mean? What are some of, like, the tools or the ways, I guess, that you guys have found integration to work for you?
I mean, again, I like the community aspect of just kind of going around the circle and talking about the experiences. Just kind of like what Lindsay was saying, like when you get into this group, you create this container, and the container has its own energy, and it's interesting to see how everybody's puzzle piece puts together this grand mosaic. And that's for me, it's been the communication aspect of it, and just really listening to others' experiences. Um, Kind of putting that into my own experience for that ceremony, or even into the bigger life, because we're all kind of dealing with the same things, just from a different perspective. And just really talking it out, and being able to share in your experience and to be completely open, I think is just really beneficial, and is part of that healing process.
Mm, absolutely, I agree. Because I know we had a retreat not too long ago, and like I was on medicine, and you were, support staff, and I can remember going through my process with you. So I was like integrating in real time on the medicine. So then afterwards, the next day, and when we were like, leaving and going back to life, I was like, wow, I don't feel like I have so much to integrate this time. Like I feel like it's already been achieved. So that was a really, really beautiful experience for me. And I'm so grateful to you. Like always, always I will be for that weekend and that moment. You just kind of like, and for me, I'm always in pain, right? Like my stomach, oh my God, that energy gets so intense. So just to like kind of have you like hold me while I was in pain, and just being able to talk about the energy and what I was seeing, that was really profound. So I agree, having that part for me. Normally I'll journal, and I will go into like massive self-reflection, and I just kind of like shut down the outside world for a minute, and I have to retreat inwards and really like look and reflect and analyze and process it all. And that really helps me on my integrational journey.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah,
um,
for me, it's been like really helpful also to work with a therapist, which I've been doing since my first retreat in 2019. And actually, that's what got me into therapy. And I probably needed to be in it for at least 10 years before that. But it's been helpful to just kind of have that, that space set up, you know, on a regular basis, to have the time to talk, and journaling as well, like you mentioned. That's been helpful.
does your therapist, I'm just curious, do they work with like plant medicine and stuff, or is that something like you have to kind of teach them about in the process? I'm just curious.
Yeah, you know what? I don't actually really know the answer to that, because when I found her, I was looking for an EMDR therapist, not I wasn't specifically trying to like integrate anything. I mean, I had just come back from my
Mm,
trip, and I was trying to work, I was integrating, but I was aware of the fact that I had a lot of trauma that I needed to work through, and I thought EMDR would be, actually, it was a recommendation of the therapist on staff at the retreat. She was suggested I try EMDR because I had talked to her a good bit over the arc of the week, just about what I was working through and stuff, and she suggested that. So I found this therapist, and uh, and I never asked her like about her position on that.
yeah,
And but when I've mentioned it, you know, several times now, she always seems very like, there's no like shock on her face, or she seems very like it's just part, normal. I
yeah,
wouldn't be surprised if she's gone and done her own thing. I know there's a lot of therapists that are doing that now.
right.
Um, they'll go down to wherever it's, on the up and up, and do a ceremony, because I mean, I think that that's kind of necessary too if you're going to be working with people that are trying to integrate from plant medicine. I think you kind of need, you can do a much better job if you have personal firsthand experience with the medicine.
No,
So
I completely agree. And that's the one thing I've thought about is getting like my licensing and going into like that avenue, but there's just something about a clinical setting. I would much rather not do that and be more like outside the box. But I know I had PTSD after my, divorce situation, and I ended up in therapy for a year. And at that point I wasn't even, really on the plant medicines. I don't think I had gone to Peru yet. Um, but I don't know. I would talk to her about my spiritual stuff, and I felt like I just needed someone to talk to, and she didn't really kind of get it or whatever. So I was just kind of curious if, like, yeah, I don't know, plant medicine. I don't know. Sometimes I feel like, yeah, it's got that stigma and whatnot, but
yeah,
that's
Right.
awesome that you can at least, yeah, have like a safe setting and be able to really talk to somebody and get their like medical profession like advice and help too. And I think that's really important for the audience to know is there's so many avenues for sure.
yeah, for
Right.
sure.
And
All right. Oh, go ahead.
no, there's one more thing as you were saying with that, kind of like talking to your therapist. I think there's a level of shame too that kind of is connected to plant medicine from our culture. And, we all kind of feel like, oh, this isn't like, this is so not part of our society and we're kind of getting outside. But I think that um, I think with that whole shame thing, we have to come to terms with that and recognize these are natural medicines that have been used for thousands and thousands and thousands of years by many different cultures.
Right.
And, we really have to just kind of drop that stigma and that shame, that, we're doing something wrong because we're actually, pursuing something so natural and so wonderful that, we really have to kind of change our mindsets as a group, as a society.
Absolutely. And I'm hoping like that's where we're headed. And I think like, doing episodes like this and hearing like our experiences maybe helps people who are on the fence or maybe who are really closed off. Because for so long culturally it was, yeah, like this is drugs, this is bad, like,
Right.
and even with marijuana, in the last decade or 2 decades, even that has drastically changed. Because I remember growing up, it was such a bad thing, and it was so private. And now, I live in a state where there's recreation and medical dispensaries everywhere.
Oh yeah.
So it's like, yeah, it's crazy.
But
And
that
just
we went from hot to cold too, where we were, kind of demonizing the plant, and then all of a sudden it's like almost kind of like, just throwing it out there and, making all these deals and flashy labels and everything. It just happens so quickly that we, almost feels like the spirituality did not come with it through legalization. We kind
no,
of like drop the spirituality and be like, hey, it's free, you can have it now, and this store's
right.
got a deal and that store's got a deal, and look at all these beautiful packages. It's really
Yeah.
kind of stripping the spirituality aspect of it.
Absolutely. And I would say to people, to the audience, like with any medicine, with any psychedelic, with any, plant, excessiveness is always, right. I think it depends on how available it is to you. Like ayahuasca obviously is a little bit different, but with people growing, shrooms in their own house and whatnot, that's a little, different. But sometimes from my own experiences and from others, it can be really hard to come back. There's a part of you that wants to be in that space of joy and bliss and wonder and awe, and to come back into your body can really be a struggle. So there definitely can be downsides to that. And just like everything else that humans do, we can be excessive and abusive, and then it becomes a coping mechanism and an addiction, which is not the purpose at all of these medicines. They are meant to help us heal the wounds and give us like the guidance and the insight, for our own human journey and spiritual journey that we're on. But with that, we are just a little past an hour, so I'm just going to wrap up. Thank you to the audience. Thank you to John and Lindsay for being here and really, just kind of having this open dialogue with me about your own experiences and your own, thoughts, opinions, and feelings with psychedelics and plant medicines. Just super, super grateful that the medicine led us together into this beautiful community and that we can now, take that and try and share that with others, and bring that message of healing into the collective. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
It was a great conversation.
Yeah, it was. And like you said, I mean, we could take 100 detours and do these like conversations all day. They're just so fun and eye opening. So I'm really, really, truly grateful for you both. And I really, hope maybe New Year's Eve, or if not, into the winter, we'll see each other again.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah,
Well,
definitely. Thank
take
you so much
care
for
and
having me.
enjoy your lovely day.
Absolutely. You as well. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
You're welcome. Bye, Lindsay. Thanks.